Inductive reasoning and conditional statements. That's what this video is going to cover. So just start talking about inductive reasoning. Basically what that means is you make a conjecture, and a conjecture is an educated guess. Now in order for your educated guess or conjecture to be considered true, it must be true all of the time. If you can find one example that would prove it false, then your conjecture is actually false. And what do you need to do that? It's called a counterexample. So a counterexample is what will prove a conjecture false. So it makes a lot more sense when you just talk about some examples. So we're going to say, we're going to talk about these two. So first we're going to say if it's true or false. If it is false, you must give a counterexample. If you cannot think of a counterexample that proves it false, that means it is actually a true statement. So, given B is between A and C. That's what we are given. So our conjecture is going to be that AB is congruent to BC. So think about that for a second. If you say that it is true, then you're wrong. It's false. Check it out. Your counterexample simply needs to say something like this. A, B, C. Call this 5, this 10, and say that the whole thing is 15. It's just, B is somewhere in between A and C. No one said it was exactly in the middle. So, if this is given, that conjecture is actually false. Okay? So, why don't you think about the second example. It says A is a right angle, so the conjecture is angle A is equal to 90 degrees. True or false? If you say true, you are correct. That's the definition of a right angle. Right angles will always be 90 degrees. So you are good to go. Okay? So that's a little bit about inductive reasoning. So a conditional statement is basically an if-then statement. It's an illogical statement with two parts that has a hypothesis and a conclusion. So a lot of times you will see this notation, or if P then Q, or P implies Q. This little arrow means P implies Q, or if P then Q. The first part that comes after your if is a hypothesis, and what comes after is your conclusion. And a lot of times it's the same thing. We have to discuss whether it's true or false. And then in the next video we're going to talk about different kinds of conditional statements. So if we look at number 1 here, basically the first thing you want to do is state the hypothesis and the conclusion. So I'm just going to underline the hypothesis and the conclusion. So our hypothesis would be an angle is 40 degrees. Then the conclusion we can draw is it's an acute angle. And this would definitely be a true statement. So if an angle is 40 degrees, then it is an acute angle. We are good to go. That is a true statement. Okay? So that's just a quick little video on inductive reasoning and conditional statements. The next video will talk about different kinds of conditionals. Until then, this is Longo and I'm out. See you, bye.